According to Rolling Stone magazine, Mark Knopfler is ranked as one of the greatest guitarists of all time, as if we needed them to tell us that. He's best known for his group, Dire Straits, who became the biggest band in Britain since Pink Floyd and maybe in the world, and had one of the biggest selling albums of all time with Brothers in Arms. But what many people don't know is that Mark is the only rock star to have a species of dinosaur named after him. Strange, but true. And that during those heady, hedonistic gigs in the 80s, his stimulant of choice on stage and off was a nice cup of tea. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mark Knopfler. Buckle up a bit, come a little bit closer. Lovely.
I was told this was my mark, darling.
Mark, I've mentioned your tea, and you do make a very sort of unlikely rock star, if we go with a sort of literal definition of that. Yet, in the 80s, you did find yourself at the helm of this sort of supersonic group, this enormous edifice that was seen to epitomize everything about the kind of Gordon Gekko era in much the same way as Martin's book Money. It must have been extremely strange for someone like yourself who's not an attention seeker, and I wondered at what point you realized that in order to reclaim your life, you had to walk away from it.
The scaling down, I think, was required, yeah. It was, everything was too big. I remember actually walking into catering at the back of one of these big gigs, and it got to a pretty big scale, and there were some truck drivers in there who I didn't recognize because they were leapfrogging stages to different places. And when I saw these truck drivers that I didn't recognize, it was certainly a turning point. I thought that it had got too big. But I had lots of other times when I'd thought exactly the same thing.
Was there anything at all about being this kind of giant? I've noticed there's a few gentlemen in the audience today, I don't know if you've seen them yourself, that are wearing red t-shirts with a kind of iconic image of you, and they may even be glow-in-the-dark headbands. I'm a bit worried about them.
Yes, they have my sympathy.
But I mean, you ditched that outfit quite a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any reason why any self-respecting young man should still be wearing it?
None that I can think of. But the reason why I adopted that, in fact, was that I used to sweat with the old-fashioned lights. The old lights are very heavy and very, very hot. And I was spraying sweat all over the place when I was playing, and I couldn't see my chords through my tears.
Darling.
So that's really why I did that. And when they brought in these modern lights, I didn't need to have a headband anymore, so I stopped wearing that too.
Well, it's a miracle with that kind of handicap, the spraying sweat handicap, that you managed to make it into this list of the world's greatest guitarists ever. Number 27, I think.
Well, I think I would be a guitar teacher's worst nightmare if I do everything wrong on the guitar.
How do you mean?
Well, if this was a guitar neck, for instance, the correct way would be to play with your thumb in the back of the neck and your wrist round here, and adopt these impossible positions. And I hold it like a plumber holds a hammer, you know.
Well, you certainly make it sing, nevertheless. Your skills as a songwriter seem only to increase. I know that no lesser figure than Bob Dylan was particularly taken with your lyrics. I think was it on Private Investigations when he liked the way you rhymed diary with inquiry.
Oh, yes, he did, yes. I remember Bob saying that, yes, bless him. No, it was a thrill for me, obviously, to be sought out by Bob, and he came along to a thing we were doing. We did our first club tour of the States. This is what you do. You do pubs and clubs, and then your venues get a little bit bigger.
Cities.
And yes, and that just led to working on some records and odds and ends. But
I wanted to talk to you about your relationship with your lyrics, because you're sort of brimful of literary connections. Your wife Kitty's just written her second novel, Criers Hill.
Great, too.
It's great, absolutely.
It is great.
Well, you'd have to say that as well. I know you think it, and I agree.
Well, I wouldn't just say that, because I am quite serious about books, yeah.
Well, that's where I was going to take this, because you also studied English, and I wondered how much literature had had an effect on you as a songwriter. I mean, there are songs, actually, of yours that have been inspired by books you've read.
Well, that's right. I mean, I could be inspired by a bus timetable.
That doesn't say much for Thomas Pynchon, then,
No,
does it?
but it can come from anywhere. It can come from something somebody says. It can come from a situation in which you find yourself. And it can come from a picture or a scrap of newspaper. But it can come from books and has come from books. Two or three come immediately to mind. And yes, I mean, there was...
What would they be?
Well, you know, there was one recent one, for instance, where I was writing a song about a tattoo artist. I've always been fascinated by that. Since a child, you know, I was a victim of the fairground and always been interested in the carnival and that side of things. And I was reading this book by Sarah Hall called The Electric Michelangelo. That's one of the last ones that I think she's got a new one coming out quite soon. And I was writing a song about a tattoo artist, and my song is called True Love Will Never Fade. And I like that.
I like that. You've got
but the book, what I mean is that what happens, a book that you're reading, can just conjoin with what you're doing and help in a major way. The Thomas Pynchon one was Mason and Dixon. I was one of my traveling companions for a while. It was a good old long book, and I was flying into Philadelphia over the modern conurbation, looking at these enormous ships, and again that tied up with this Geordie chap and the fellow from Gloucestershire, and they're just two English guys hacking this enormous swathe through America.
The Mason-Dixon line, which you sing about.
Yeah, and sometimes that'll happen, that a book that you're reading crashes into where you are. But I do, you know, and I've usually got a book on the go when I'm traveling and so on and so forth.
You're going to play a song for us today. We're doubly treated, not just by your presence, but the fact you're going to sing for us. Can you tell me about this song? Because I believe it's a new song that we may not have heard before.
Well, no, I don't suppose you will. I mean, I haven't heard it many times. It's taken me, I am very slow about doing just about everything. And about 40 years ago or so, when we were 11 or 12 in grammar school, we were, the horror of the school Christmas party came round. The school Christmas party would be looming, and one of the things that you had to do was ask a girl to go to the Christmas party with you. And McIntyre, who was our games teacher, was an ex-Scots commando, and we were terrified of him. And his method of punishment was to summon you towards him. Martin Knopfler, come here, boy. And you'd go to him, and he'd say, take off your slipper. And you'd take your slipper off. Touch your toes. So there was this 1, 2, 3, bang. And
now you've written a song for him.
Yeah, well, I think it's compromised.
There's no justice in this world, Mark Knopfler.
It severely compromised my ballroom dancing ability, because instead of teaching us the games, he'd teach us waltzing in the gym. We just had our little shorts, and so these little boys all standing in the gym, he'd yell, find a space, you know, and that voice would boom in the gym, and we'd find a space, and he'd go, it's there, and it's there, and it's not like that, boy, and you'd get all this stuff, and we made a complete mess of, I remember, and I can't waltz now without...
Well, you're not going to waltz, you're going to sing, so that's very lucky for all of us.
Oh,
Thank you very, very much.
I don't know about that.